Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web is an extract, shorthand for a set of laws, and is shorthand in general for CBD, named after now 9-year-old Charlotte Figi, who suffers from a rare form of epilepsy called Dravet Syndrome. One of our guests is her mother, Paige Figi, who runs the Coalition for Access Now, which is focused on a federal bill to deschedule CBD and hemp. Our other guest, Heather Jackson, runs Realm of Caring, The Rock, in Colorado Springs, working on research, education, and advocacy. The two form a perfect pair, helping and educating families with anything from epilepsy to Crohn's find the research and solutions they need to heal their children. Welcome to Cannabis Economy. I'm your host, Seth Adler. Check us out on Twitter @CanEconomy. This is a special episode. Please listen through to the end, where I provide instruction on how you can donate to each cause. We are here at The Rock. We're at The Rock.
Yes, you are.
We are at the Realm of Caring. We have Heather Jackson.
Hello.
We have Paige Figi.
Hello.
Like the fruit, did you say?
Like the fruit.
Yeah.
Fig.
Figi. It's that easy. You would know that last name because of Charlotte Figi. You would know Charlotte Figi because of Charlotte's Web, which is a strain, sure, but it's more than that. Let's just jump in right there so that we know who we're talking to.
Sure. Charlotte is my daughter. She's a 9-year-old girl with epilepsy. So this whole thing started unintentionally back 4 years ago. Just a little over 4 years now. She has an untreatable form of epilepsy. So medicine doesn't work. We have tried everything. She has a very severe form of a very severe syndrome. And she probably had a couple months left to live. We had signed a do not resuscitate. She was on life support. She's on oxygen. We were feeding her through a tube in her stomach. She was in a wheelchair and having a seizure every half an hour. And so it was just like a catatonic little child.
You had already signed
child.
those forms.
Yep, signed them. And we were just giving her quality of life. She was coming off of her last drug. We couldn't try anything else. I always had something left to try, and when she was 5, I had nothing left, and we were kind of saying goodbye. Her twin sister was saying goodbye to her. I didn't know what was going to happen, and it was devastating. So it was a very, very sad story. And as her mother, if you have children, you understand this. You don't give up. You keep looking and digging and trying, and there's got to be something. And a group of parents, we started looking at old remedy for epilepsy. And it came from the cannabis plant. It's such a controversial source,
right.
But it was a known anticonvulsant. It stopped seizures, and doctors used this hundreds of years ago. And I said, well, I'm in Colorado. It's a legal state. It's a medical marijuana legal state. And I'll give it a try. And at the worst, I can ease her suffering. And she was absolutely suffering. And so I met Joel Stanley. He's one of the Stanley brothers known for the Charlotte's Web oil that he created.
Right.
We formulated it. I wrote a dosing protocol. I put her in a little mini, quietly little mini clinical trial. I wasn't telling anybody. Nobody knew what I was doing, even though she was legal. Pediatrics was legal in the state. Mm-hmm. And it worked. We tried this. I put it in her stomach tube. She couldn't swallow. And her 300 seizures a week, she didn't have a single seizure that first week from her first dose. And this was lab tested, very clean. It was high CBD, low THC.
Right.
Hemp oil. She wasn't high from this. Shockingly, she was high from everything else she was on.
Let me stop you and ask a couple questions. First off, if it was legal for her to be taking it, how come you chose not to say anything to anybody?
She was legal in the state of Colorado. She had a red card. She was the youngest child in the state and most severe that they'd ever seen. It took a lot to get her a red card. Mm-hmm. She's legal in Colorado, but it's not federally legal. So if she was in the hospital. We lived in the hospital. Right. So if she were to go to Children's Hospital, and our bags were just packed always by the front door, ready to go to the hospital. So if we were to go to the hospital, I would be reported as giving my child a Schedule I substance. And if people found out my husband was in the military, and I mean, there was just very, so while it's legal in Colorado, the laws don't align, and federally it isn't, and so it's a problem. These kids who are, Charlotte wasn't at the time we homeschooled, she was too severe, but kids who are going to school, it's a federally funded institution. You can't do that. You can't do this. So
once
it was
you walk
scary.
through those doors, you're now on federal land, essentially.
So all the laws aside, let's say it was legal, like it isn't in Colorado.
Right.
It still was terrifying to be that first little kid, that little dying child, to use weed. And I'm reporting a successful story, an incredible success story. We were a conservative family. It sounded crazy. It was scary. It was terrifying. I didn't know what was going to happen. I would risk prison for my child, but I couldn't. Nobody else could take care of her. Right. So to have her removed from my care wasn't an option. So I was very, very cautious.
When you did that research and found this as a potential solution, if you will, how did you then find the Stanley brothers? Where was the connection there?
I sat down and called places like Israel. I had people helping translate. I called France, and I pulled up all of this research. People say there's not enough research. There's enough research to write a protocol for a 5-year-old kid. There's plenty of research. So I called everybody, got what I needed, figured out what I would have to give her, how many milligrams, what it would have to look like, and then set about in the state of Colorado to find the people to help. Mm-hmm. And it turns out there was nobody who even knew what cannabidiol or CBD was. No one even knew what it was. And I called everybody. And every time someone said, I don't know what CBD is, but we've got this, I said, that's fine. I'll visit your dispensary. Can you give me 5 to 10 more phone numbers? Just anyone you can think of that might know, a laboratory or somebody breeding the plant to be higher in CBD or lower in THC, other things. So I literally either got hung up on by a person, got 10 more numbers from them, and I went through and called probably close to everybody in the state of Colorado.
Why would you get hung up on?
People thought I was crazy. Even people in
the industry,
working in a dispensary, selling THC, they thought I was crazy as a mother giving this to a dying 5-year-old kid.
Oh, I see.
They were nervous to even help me.
Be involved in that. Whatever
Very
you
nervous.
have going on, I'm not.
Just as nervous as I was to have to go to the hospital or be reported for this.
Okay.
If she died in my care, which was going to happen, it looked exactly like that was the route we were on. What would they do? Would they in an autopsy see that she was being given cannabis?
Right.
What would happen? So people were terrified. No one was doing this with a little tiny kid. So
and 4 years ago is way before.
4 years ago, things were different. It was very, very different 4 years ago.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
So I went to the last dispensary. I visited every dispensary. I was buying thousands of dollars of dried material, sending it to the lab, testing it, paying for this myself, trying to find what I was looking for. The THC wasn't a solution for her. It made her seizures worse. I think that it is a solution for many, and it does ease the suffering. It just wasn't exactly what I was looking for. I went to the last dispensary and just gave up. People didn't understand the science, what hadn't met my demand. And
we're all caught up now, so this sounds kind of fantastical, but at the time, the knowledge wasn't there.
The knowledge wasn't there, and what is the saying? Necessity is the mother of invention. I had a need. I saw that there is something out there. I'm not going to give up.
Right.
I have to try this. This
I will
is my
call
baby.
every phone number.
Right.
I will go to every dispensary.
So I went to every dispensary. I quit this. One day I quit. I said, I'm done. Nobody can help me. Right. And maybe in 20 years, if I had $5 million in a laboratory, I could make what I wanted. Maybe, but it won't be in her lifetime, in Charlotte's lifetime. Right. And then that same day I gave up. I just gave up. Joel came and knocked on my door. So one of those numbers I called sent a breeder, a hemp grower, and a medical marijuana breeder to my house to meet me, saying this guy might have some information. And Joel and I met that same day that I quit. And he had a lot of information on cancer. He had been making oils and growing strains for cancer patients to success. Some of them were so started so late that they didn't make it. And some, it helped them just with the nausea from the treatments for cancer.
Right.
But he had chemo.
Yeah, right.
So he had all of his cancer knowledge. I shared all of my epilepsy knowledge, and he met Charlotte, saw his first epileptic seizure that night, and decided he was going to step in and help us if he could. He was going to try, and it was. I mean, it was a monumental moment because people did not want to get involved. People were scared. He put all of that aside and said, I don't care what happens. This is a worthwhile thing to see if it works. And I said, we can keep it as quiet as you want. I just want to see if this is going to be the thing. I have to know if this is going to be the thing. And he said, interestingly enough, I have a plant I've been breeding that's exactly the numbers you're looking for. That's
what were
high.
those numbers?
It's high in CBD. What is the...
About a 25 to 1. So for every 25 milligrams of CBD, about 1 milligram of THC. So what would be considered, I mean, back then, a 1-to-1 was considered high CBD. So as Paige is going around, requesting this from dispensaries, oh yeah, we've got that, but that's not... Yeah.
Not in her terms.
Exactly.
Nobody was
Their
lab
terms.
testing.
Right,
Yeah, we've got this top shelf stuffed man.
Right.
And I'm like, well, what is the number? What is the laboratory? But yeah, so that's exactly, and I knew her THC threshold of what caused the seizure to the milligram. And by the studies, I knew how many milligrams CBD she needed. So Joel's like...
What was that threshold, just so we're...
Well, for Charlotte, I don't want to share too much because she's very, very
Fair
THC
enough.
sensitive.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that number's very, very low.
Fine.
So if she has 2 milligrams of THC, way back then, she was seizing.
Too much.
Yeah,
Right.
too much. Some people, it's 5, very, very low threshold. Some people can have 100 milligrams and be fine and go to work.
Yeah.
For Charlotte, it's extremely, and she's like this with every drug. She's very, very sensitive. Anyway, Joel's like, that's funny you have that exact idea of a plant in mind. I have this little baby plant, a couple of them, and we're breeding this just to see what else we can do. If THC is this helpful medically, what else is in the plant? And how odd that we met, and how strange and fortuitous, and it worked. We formulated it. I had standards. It had to be grown a certain way. I didn't want anything sprayed on it.
Right.
It had to be consistent. It had to be tissue cultured. I didn't want seeds to mutate. I didn't want the dose to change.
Right.
Nothing could change. So I said it.
Consistency.
So yeah, I'm like, that's great that you're going to help me. Would you agree to these 7 criteria? That's going to make it very, very expensive and very, very difficult because I won't try.
So fortunately for the market, Paige was their first client. Unfortunately for the Stanley brothers was like, okay, we've really got to do this right, which is really expensive.
We'll
and
do
she
this.
couldn't run out.
Now do exactly this.
Now do exactly this. Are we still cool?
Right.
And if it did work, I still hadn't tried it. I didn't know if this worked for her. She couldn't run out of this. I couldn't. They couldn't price gouge me. The price had to be set. It had to be organically grown as much as possible. And so on and on and on. And
what was their take on it? What was, how did they respond?
He said yes, absolutely, without hesitation to every single thing.
Okay.
And that's how they were doing it anyway. And he wouldn't have done it another way. It was just that with such a medical situation, it wasn't how people were used to, treating this.
So from the moment that he met her and saw that first seizure, and until he did master the strain, and master that oil to be what you wanted, what was that time period?
A couple of months, probably 2 months later. We started her on it.
Pretty quick.
Yeah, pretty quick. They cultivated it.
Right.
And got it up and going. The lab test looked great. We put it in her feeding tube, and she stopped seizing. And it was, I didn't believe it. You lose hope. Hope is a dangerous thing as a parent. And so I was going through, I'm meticulous about keeping track of what I do with her. So she was tube fed. She didn't eat by mouth. So I'm thinking, what else did I change in her diet? What else did I change in her life to make her stop seizing? The drugs these kids take, barbiturates, benzodiazepine, very, very strong, very psychoactive. You may not even see seizure control. So we're seeing this kid super, super high from the drugs, and I'm giving her a hemp oil, and I see no side effect.
High from the other drugs.
High from the pharmaceuticals.
Right, yeah.
How could something with no side effect? How could this, what looks like a dietary supplement, drinking an extra glass of water a day, whatever, however you want to look at it, such a benign thing, be stopping her? These are massive grand mal seizures. These aren't eye flutters. These aren't staring off for a moment. She's having a grand mal seizure every half an hour, and a lot of them are status seizures. So status seizure is longer than 30 minutes. The hospital really couldn't deal with us anymore. There's no medicine to stop her seizures, so we were just dealing with it at home. It was terrifying. So to see her take this hemp oil, she's not high from it even, and it stops her seizures, it was astounding to watch.
What was that timeline? I'm sorry for interrupting. What was that timeline from when she started to take the oil until the seizures?
A half an hour.
Get out of here.
So she didn't have a seizure that first half an hour.
Immediate.
Remember? Yep, she had one every 30 minutes. So an hour went by, she didn't have a seizure. A day went by, not a seizure. 7 days, she had one. After 7 days, she had a seizure.
She did.
And so that was 4 years ago. She's 99.9% seizure controlled still to this day. She still has epilepsy.
Is it once every 7 days still?
She
or?
has about 1 or 2 a month.
1 or 2 a month?
Yeah. Yeah. So
for how long?
they're in her sleep.
Okay.
And they're just a minute long.
I know people can't see this on your little podcast, but I got to go chest bump my girl.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And that's
They can certainly hear it,
I
Heather.
just love it. I
And
love
that's
this story. I have goosebumps still, and it is 4 years later.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
She's
It's like
been on
magic.
the same thing for 4 years and no drugs, not a hospital trip, not a status event, nothing. So everyone, you've heard this story. If you've heard it, you heard the story, or you've heard it from another family, and that's fine. It's one story. However, and then more and more and more started.
Right.
And now I don't know how many thousands.
Well,
it's incredible.
There's another story, which is Heather, your son.
Yeah. And I think that it's really best to start with that. So,
Yeah.
What happened for us is we were a few months behind Paige.
Yeah.
And our hospice counselor slid me a little piece of paper, and she could have completely lost her job for it. And she said, I don't know if this is something you've looked into or anything you've researched yet, but I have another family. It's working for them. And there were 3
was
phone
that
numbers.
Paige?
That piece of paper was my handwriting. If I know you have other kids in hospice, and I know you were going to risk getting fired. If they just want to talk about
Just to talk.
why Charlotte is walking again,
Right.
Maybe just slip them my number. We can talk.
And so it was Paige's phone number. It was the lab's phone number. Because we can say who she is now. Miss Kate knew I was very, very much like Paige, very meticulous. I tracked absolutely everything. I had a notebook. I kept track of everything, what he ate, when he slept, when he pooped, everything.
All right.
I wanted to see, this was my semblance of control. I wanted to figure out what was going on with my son. And then the last phone number was the Stanleys.
Right.
And so I started first with the lab, because my son also was extremely medically fragile at the time, and I knew it was important what I was putting in his body, and I didn't want to, you hear about molds and pesticides and all these things, and it's like, okay, we can't go there. So I called the lab first. Yes, you can test for all these things. Yes, you can know the potency, exactly the milligrams you're giving. I was game. Mm-hmm. He also talked a little bit about the science of, and then I called the Stanleys, and I talked with Joel, and it took a couple of months. It worked with Charlotte, but he was still really nervous. I mean, this was pot and this was kids,
Right. How old was your son at the time?
He was 9.5.
Okay, a little bit older.
So we had really dealt with, Zakai's seizure started when he was 4 months old, and he had 6 different seizure types. So we had dealt with daily seizures almost a decade. We had been through 17 pharmaceuticals. He was now receiving hospice palliative services. Our option was to recycle back through these pharmaceuticals. In my heart, I just could not do it. I was already taking it's how I kept sane for that decade. I was an avid researcher anyway, so I had already been looking at cannabidiol, which no one could pronounce back then, and definitely saw that it was an anticonvulsant, and so
you had found it as well in your own research.
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And it took them a while to get us something. Basically, what do you want me to sign to release your liability? I don't have.
This is the Stanley
I don't
Brothers.
have
Now you're
anything
back
else.
with them. Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
I don't have anything else, and this is.
What was it about this the oil that Charlotte was using that wasn't working for your son?
It actually did work.
Oh, okay.
So we gave our first dose July 19th, 2012.
Okay.
It was about 5 months after they had started.
Right.
Charlotte had started, and it was a similar story. So I have to preface all of this with that there are children who respond just like our kids have. Mm-hmm. These super responders where it's just this overnight thing. The vast majority, it takes a little bit of time.
Sure.
But Zakai was having a seizure every 2 to 10 minutes while he slept. I describe them as like full body electrocutions. So very brief, but very violent, every 2 to 10 minutes. Gave him his first dose, makeshift bed on the floor, which is what you do as a parent, hook up the pulse ox machine and get them laying down for bed, and no seizure. 2 minutes passed, 10 minutes passed, an hour, several hours, and he went on for 48 hours with no seizures.
Now, I thought you had said that did I mishear you, that it took a little while for him?
It took about 3 months to gain full seizure control.
Got it. Okay.
So
there was an immediate effect. However, full seizure control took some
yes.
time.
And so we were slowly titrating up, and we were we must share a brain, because I was very much, okay, how much are we giving? Let's track this whole thing. Yeah. Because if this works, we need to talk with other parents about this option, because your doctor's not going to mention it. Someone's going to need to. That's, we're going to need to do that. And so within 3 months, his seizures completely remitted. And so his last seizure was actually October 3rd, 2012. We are well over 3 years completely clinically seizure-free.
Unbelievable.
That's awesome.
And it's just, every month we do his seizure-free birthday, and we don't do that anymore. But it's absolutely incredible.
So here you are, really on the edge, with Charlotte. Sounds like Zakai was in not great shape, but not quite to the edge, but was able to find the path. Mm-hmm. Did they change the oil at all for him? Or
no.
It was just his body kind of taking...
It takes a while to really titrate up to your therapeutic dose. Right. And so that's all it was.
His endocannabinoid system type
right,
of thing?
Or his individual therapeutic dose. So it just took some time to do that, and then we found that, and then we didn't mess with that.
It's like any drug. You don't start off on your working dose. You work up slowly.
Yeah. Right. So here we have 2 children, beautiful children, because I did just meet Charlotte. Haven't met Zakai yet. But who were seizing and uncontrollably, and now under control.
Right.
So this is 2012 for both of you. What happens next?
We really started talking about what we were seeing in our little communities. So these catastrophic epilepsy diagnoses, these are really tight communities, and you have an absolute obligation if something is working to, whether back then they were Yahoo groups and Facebook groups where you'd say, hey, I don't know if this will work for your kid, but this is working for mine. And if it was standing on Zakai's head 10 minutes before bed, that's what I would be preaching from the mountaintops,
Sure.
but it was this plant. And so we began talking about what we were seeing, inside of these little groups. And then it became really a situation where we couldn't keep up with the number of inquiries. So back then it was Facebook and text messaging, and it was just this constant all day long of giving people information. And back then you had to move. So a lot of it was these counseling sessions of, how to get here. And then we created long documents it was 11 pages of step by step. And it was like, because of the number of inquiries, read this first. And then if you have questions, let us know. And it just evolved from there. And that's how the Realm of Caring Foundation was born, was to handle the need.
You were in Colorado as well,
yes,
to begin with. How many people do you think in those first initial months and years did move to Colorado, the folks that you spoke to?
We stopped counting at 500, and that would have been March of last year, when the decision was made that they were going to ship.
Right. So,
and we had representation from every single state and other countries, Spain. It was incredible.
All coming to Colorado.
Yes.
Which is how Realm of Caring was born. All right. So, Heather Jackson, what is Realm of Caring?
We are a nonprofit organization, so we're a 501c3 organization, and it's really simple. We provide support services for those that are using cannabinoid therapy, and that's a really broad definition. So what that looks like in practice is we conduct research. So we have the largest IRB-approved or Institutional Review Board approved research registry for epilepsy in the world, and we're collaborating with Johns Hopkins University on that. We're launching our general registry. So our demographics have changed because the initial 2 storytellers were pediatric epilepsy.
Sure.
90% were pediatric epilepsy. And now that we're a couple years down the road here, people are using this for all kinds of different medical conditions when pharmaceuticals don't help. Cancer, pain, autism, MS, Parkinson's. The list goes
and
on and on.
And they're all coming through the Realm of Caring.
And they come through the Realm of Caring.
Chrones,
and so,
colitis, whatever.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so we wanted to start a general registry where we could collect data on pretty much if you've stubbed your toe and you've used cannabinoid, cannabinoid therapy, we'd love to know how that turned out for you. So definitely epilepsy was, and still by far the largest demographics we serve, but there's people are using it for other things, really astonishingly well. So we want to track that too. So research, and then education is a big part of what we do, and that's the care center that you got to see this morning.
So I do want to talk about the dance party in the care center.
Yeah.
But before we do that, I do want to zero in on the research and how Johns Hopkins is involved and exactly what is going on.
So these are observational research registries. So they are prospective. And that's really next to a double-blind placebo-controlled trial. That's the best research you can get accomplished is take baseline information, and depending on the diagnosis is where we've gathered those core data elements. So for example, for epilepsy, we actually worked with NINDS, National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, and said, hey, what's good research to you? And they gave us some core data elements. And then because at the realm of caring,
good research
exactly,
so that we can deliver on that.
So that we're asking the right questions and gathering the right data. And then, our world at Realm of Caring revolves around quality of life because quality of life matters. And so we wanted to collect that information as well. That's not listed as core data elements at NINDS, but that's very important to us as parents.
Right.
And so we wanted to track quality of life improvement. And then because financially, economically, this has changed our lives. I wanted personally, and I won't stop until insurance is paying for this, I want to collect that economic data. So have you reduced pharmas? Are you having less ambulance rides, hospital visits, doctor's visits, et cetera? And so we're collecting all of
that kind of balance sheet.
And it's going to take years, to figure this out. But we're up for the challenge, and that's literally those areas, that we're tracking.
And interestingly, the financial data is going to be huge. Sadly, I guess, because people care more about what we are not costing the system.
Sure.
A week in the ICU with a child, an ambulance trip to the hospital, a flight for life. What that's not costing for these kids who aren't in the hospital anymore. That's going to make things move a little faster and reform, whether it's insurance covering this or political reform or whatever. Sadly, that number of finances matter.
Of course.
To people.
Absolutely. I mean, I unfortunately have had, some experience with very, very high level doctors who quality of life is not on the list, really.
Right.
So, okay, fine. Let's first start with the finances. Let's then let's go to, what the rest of the research is proving. You guys go ahead and take care of quality of life, which brings us to the dance party.
Yes.
So I walked in here in the morning. It's basically the first thing that you do. And do you do this every morning?
We do this absolutely every morning. So this morning we start our week with an hour-long meeting. We're actually working through a book right now. So we're doing a book club meeting, and then we dance party every single day. And it just it really sets the mood for the day. And it's just a lot of fun. And then we bring it in, and it's cheesy, I know, but then we bring it in and we say, we will rock you. And it just sets the tone. It's awesome.
It used to be Heather and I on the phone and a few other parents that first started the whole thing on the phone, 3 a.m, and it's difficult. The first people who came to try this were very, very ill. Right. Worst case scenarios.
Sure.
And it's hard dealing with kids in hospice, kids in general that are sick. So they need to do
imagine
that.
5,000 phone calls a month, and every single one of them, this is their last option. They don't have anything else. They wouldn't be looking at this otherwise. And so we have some great systems in place to kind of,
you got to dance.
You got to breathe and you got to dance.
So this is, if there are patients here, I would imagine this is for them, but this is for the employees.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
This is the call center.
Whoever's
folks.
Here dances. Yeah. We had an NFL player stop by one morning, and we invited him in. Please dance. And he did. It was awesome.
Sure. So, why wouldn't he?
Yeah.
So talk about the call center and the 5,000 calls a month.
Sure.
That's ramped up significantly from the first 1,000 calls that you were fielding, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we do have what we call a care center. So unlike a call center, when you call about your cell phone bill and they're just trying to get you off the phone as fast as possible, the opposite happens here. And I've seen phone calls take 45 minutes and longer. And they're to build that relationship. That's their instruction. Educate, give them information based off of the data we've collected or what research would suggest, which I think is why we've maintained respect in this space, is because it's not my opinion. And I am biased.
Right.
This plant saved my kid. I love this plant.
You're as biased as they come, right?
I am as biased as they come. But when we talk to people, it's what data we've collected, and it's what research would suggest.
Good.
And so we are taking about 5,000 calls a month right now, and 2,500 additional inquiries through a live chat or emails or things like that. So we have a very high volume, and it just gives you an idea of really how underserviced this population is.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a point where doctors throw up their hands and shrug their shoulders and don't know what to do with you. And we answer that call.
I've been in that room. So my mom passed away from something called amyloidosis about 10 years ago. And I remember that moment.
Yeah.
Without question, I can see the, your story, both of you, and all of these 5,000 calls a month, which is remarkable. So that's the patients, and that's the research. And then there's the legislation, right? So that's a separate organization page, right? Coalition for Access Now. I like to call it the Coalition for Getting Shit Done.
I like that.
I second that.
I don't think that's going to go over as well in D.C.
No, not in D.C., but working title.
But local, I like that.
Yeah.
So this started when people started to move here. The medical refugees, the media called them. People were moving to Colorado to get access because this couldn't cross state lines. This couldn't leave the country, and we saw a need to go back and help those states, help those people get back home. And some of these states where the reform began, and the reform's always been worked on many decades since Prohibition. Mm-hmm. But we're just trying to send people home who want to use high CBD, a non-psychoactive, non-toxic, safe, what should be a dietary supplement. Just send them home to be able to go home. These are families that were split in half. Mm-hmm. The husband stayed. Sometimes the mother would come with her children here. Right. Sometimes some of the children would stay. And it's just, when you see it's working and when you see what this substance is, it's just a bit ridiculous, this mistake. So we started to go back to very conservative states that said, we're willing to do something in this state. Legislation said, we are going to work with you because this is a conservative thing you're asking for. And those parents went back and asked for reform. We just want the allowance to possess CBD. You don't have to grow it here. We just want to possess it and not be arrested. So Utah was the first state, and Heather worked heavily in that state, and it was the most conservative bill in the nation, and they allowed for the possession of CBD for children with epilepsy.
Right.
And then one by one, in a year and a half, I think we were at 19 states in a year and a half's time, which is incredible state reform progress.
Not necessarily overlapped with medical marijuana states.
Yep, not those. There are those that happened as well in that time, and some of those states were not going to pass. But the stories of these children, the parents wheeling their kids at the Capitol to say, please, our doctors are sending us to Colorado. Our epileptologists and neurologists, top of the medical food chain for these disorders, are saying, you know what, you should probably go check this out in Colorado because I don't know what else to tell you. But their hands were tied and they couldn't prescribe it. They couldn't deal with it. They couldn't report them using it. So they were sent here.
And those in those states, like Utah, those laws now are known as Charlotte's Web's laws.
And it's, of course, it just started from the story of that. It's not supposed to be named after a product.
Right.
It's the story of children with epilepsy that changed the dialogue about what cannabis is used for and what hemp is for.
The reason I position it that way is because we had a conversation earlier about how there are many facets to the industry of cannabis, and that there are those that are kind of against Charlotte's Web laws because it nuances it. It slices off just one piece and then leaves the rest behind, is how some in the industry would put it. What do you say to that?
So I would take a state, whatever state they're talking about, and then I would say that state has already left the whole thing behind.
Right.
But they're now allowing one part of it, and they just helped 10,000 people or 500 people. And I think that's success. And now that state is working for further reform, and they're going to have more of a chance to get something done that the legislators, usually Republican, conservative legislators, see that bill passed, the CBD bill, the Charlotte's Web bill, whatever we're calling it. The sky didn't fall. People got helped in a conservative, safe way, and now they're opening that up. And so, these things aren't aren't leaps and bounds. They're little baby steps, and people get helped. And that's success to me. And that's what they've asked us to do. They've asked us to come help with this piece of it. I don't speak for cancer because I don't have that. We see enough of that. Obviously, we know where people are using this for cancer, if it's not just like we said, chemo. But they're asking us to just come and speak on my success story with my daughter. And they're not willing to do anything more.
And I think it's a really emotionally charged topic. But what I say is to help absolutely no one until you can help absolutely everyone. This isn't a concept that makes sense to me. And now to see these states going back and expanding access. Here's a good example. Georgia, they approved 5% THC. Right. Some states only 0.3% THC. And now they're going back and they're adding cultivation legislation so that the assumption isn't it's just going to magically appear in Georgia. North Carolina, they went back. They modified it. It's easier to modify legislation to add addendums than it is to pass it in the first place.
There you go.
So what we're seeing happen is these states going back to work and increasing access, which is a beautiful thing. I also want to say, a good friend of ours, Joanne, who has glioblastoma, used Charlotte's Web 75 milligrams a day for 6 months, and her cancer's gone. And so I think this is
cancer's gone.
Her brain tumor is gone. And here's the other thing: when we talk about how emotionally charged this is, and that we talk about data we've collected and what research would suggest, everyone thinks if you have cancer, you need high THC, and you might. And even if you have epilepsy, you might. What we're seeing is less than 10% of our population, over 4,000 we've tracked, need something extra. THC, THCA, CBN, you name it. Usually a whole plant botanical extract, high CBD, low THC, works. We've seen cancer go away. We don't claim to cure anything here.
Yeah.
I've seen this.
Yeah, you've seen
I've seen this. And so I think that if we just take the emotion out of it and we just talk about what we're actually seeing with patients.
Sorry. It's unbelievable. You're talking about a tumor, brain tumor.
It was March 12th, and her husband remembers the appointment where they just shrugged their shoulders. They had done surgery to remove the tumor, and it was growing back rapidly. And he, so sweet, older couple, would drop 30 drops in her mouth 3 times a day. Ends up being about 75 milligrams a day. Much lower dosing than anecdotally we would tell someone with cancer. But it worked. 82-year-old John came in here the other week just to give hugs. He's amazing. He has prostate cancer. It has metastasized to his bones. It's now in his lungs. There is no reason for him to still be here. His doctors marvel at him, and he's taking a Charlotte's Web product. I only give those examples because I think if we can, what I mean by taking the emotion out of it is, we're this whole plant, we're these, activists, and we want it all. And I think, yes, we do. And I do too. We service a lot of people who use THC, but if we can use these steps to get there where the politicians can see the sky's not falling,
indeed,
then let's do that.
Yeah. Especially in Georgia or Utah.
Texas.
Utah was the first state.
Correct.
You don't think of Utah and cannabis, do you?
Right.
You know what? I was there in the room when we were speaking to the conservative caucus, and you should have seen the switch. Conservatives should love this because in the state issue, in the state going state by state, it really is a states' rights issue. So when you say this is a 10th Amendment issue, conservatives and Christians go,
wait a second.
Forget the federal government. And this makes sense to them. And conservatives and Christians, let's just talk about that. If they will know you by your love, then what kind of compassion and love don't we have as a Christian to provide or ease someone's suffering? After you talk about it like that, they get it. Conservative, Christians, Republicans, they get it. And Paige walks in, says what it's not, and they totally understand what it is.
You talked, when Paige walked out for a second, you locked eyes with me and you said you've got to see her in these rooms.
Yes.
So let's talk about her while she's sitting here. What is it? What is it that she's doing?
I think the ability to clearly and concisely state, here is the problem, Here is a solution, making it very simple for them. And it really is that simple. It's absolutely magic to watch. So to walk in and to see that finger in your face, not in my state, sister, and they mean it.
Right, sure.
To just flop right there after Paige tells Charlotte's story and just being involved really as a pioneer from the very beginning. It's amazing. 19 states, 18 months.
That's remarkable. It
That's
really
magic.
Is. And I want to talk about Florida in a second, but I want to repay the favor, Paige. When Heather left the room, you said you've got to see her at work here. What do you think the magic that Heather brings to the table
Heather
is?
does what I cannot do, the care, the level of care and emotion. When you're with Heather and Heather's speaking, you are crying. I have never not cried when I've been in the room and Heather's speaking to a crowd
sorry
of
about
people.
that.
So, and I'll admit I've lost something over the years of dealing with a sick child emotionally. You just harden yourself, I think.
Yeah.
And so I have that edge, and Heather brings that softness and the care and the empathy, and she's been there. So you can be on the phone with these people, or you can train your care center and absolutely understand it because you've been there. So she has that empathy that I've sort of don't.
Which is awesome because, a senator doesn't want to sit there and not be able to understand your sentence because you're bawling and, your nose is running. And, it's better Paige does that job.
But that's where it started. It started from absolutely firsthand, patient suffering, and that's where it started. So that has to be a part of this.
And there's a trifecta. So what happens is there's a family that was able to move, and it's a very small percentage that can actually do that. Right. I mean, get up and move or set up a whole entire second household. And then there's this entire population who couldn't. Then there's a legislator that will listen. And then there's someone who's experienced in this to go and speak at the hearings and to talk about really what this is. And it's just this sort of perfect situation.
Yeah, when I walked in, it took me about 5 seconds to realize that there is a Venn diagram here with very little overlap as far as your personalities. Yeah. And it works perfectly, it seems like.
It does. Yeah, it really, really does. Everyone has fallen into, really their niche. Yeah. And the Stanleys too. They're doing their own thing. They are working on cultivation and quality and new product development and all of the things that, they just excel at. Realm of Caring has this arm's length from the plant. We don't do any of that. Right. We educate and advocate and those sorts of things, provide the grassroots effort, tell the 20,000 people who've connected with us, you should write your senator today. Right. That's what we do, right. And then there's Paige's side, which is, something I absolutely can't do. I can't hop on a plane 4 times a month to here, there, and everywhere.
You can. Let's talk about Florida, I think this week or this weekend, or, there's just news about the fact that we've got a ballot initiative once again. Take us through what happened last time. Take us through where we are now as far as this ballot initiative and where you think we're going.
So Florida has passed a law for CBD. I think they nicknamed it Charlotte's Web way back when.
They
Charlotte's
absolutely
Web
did.
So, right. So it's high CBD for kids with epilepsy.
0.8%.
Right. THC, 0.8%. So hemp is defined as 0.3% THC or less. Mm-hmm. And Florida went above and beyond. So it will be medical marijuana. They're going through that process right now, the rules and regulations and licensing and all of that. At that time that bill was passing, because it was Florida and because the way we sit down, the way I go in and sit down with the legislation to try and get a bill passed, I listen. I'll go sit down and listen to the people who have the power to veto a bill. The governor, starting backwards with the highest power, the chairs of the committee, and backwards, if they say absolutely, hands down, no, we're not, this bill that you're presenting, that I didn't write, but the bill the authors are presenting, they say absolutely not. Why would you put everyone through that? Why would you put parents and sick people at the Capitol through that when you know it's going to be vetoed? The governor is going to veto this bill.
There's a hard no here.
It has to you still have to fight for what you want and what's right, and that's how this country's set up, and we have a voice, and it works. But
you're talking about democracy?
Democracy.
Okay.
My little chuckle over here.
Hilarious. But we still need to do that. But the people we're bringing into the Capitol are sick and dying, and they don't have time. It's an urgent matter, and so they listen and say, well, what will you pass? And this is the spectrum of bills mechanisms of what will help this many people at the far end, and this far end of a very liberal bill will help this many people. What will you allow?
So you literally lay it out.
You lay it out and you listen, and then that's how the legislation should be writing the bill.
And you push, but you get a yes. And no
Somewhere.
helps no one.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Somewhere.
Right. You have to get something done to help somebody. At least that's how I have to sleep at night, to help somebody. And so Florida passed a bill, and it was a long shot, and it worked, and it passed, and it's not perfect, but it said a lot. And I think that helped get that last year, was it? When it didn't pass, when the full medical didn't pass.
Right.
They needed 60%. It was 58%. So it was very, very close. It was shockingly... It was very depressing for many people who fought for that, for full medical marijuana. But I don't think that number would have been at 58% had the press not gone crazy over the bill that did pass, that the CBD bill, the Charlotte's Web bill. And I think that helped get that number all the way up to 58.
And there's a number of opinions on 58 was short or 58 was long or what have you.
I hope it passes.
Yeah.
I hope that passes this year. I don't know what it's polling at. I think looking last year, the polls were wildly, some people said it was 80%.
Yeah.
And how did we only end up with 58%? I think the polls aren't accurate. But I don't know what the actual what it's polling at. But I think pushing the media, pushing the press, pushing conservative legislation and having people change their minds is going to get it done. Yeah. Baby steps is how it happens.
Well, presidential years are good years for cannabis, and cannabis always gets more votes than either Republicans or Democrats. So it's good that it's on the ballot, no matter what, right? All right, so that kind of brings us to today. We kind of talked about Florida. As far as realm of caring is concerned, what are we looking at in 2016? What do we want to accomplish here?
We are some of the other things that we do that I didn't mention. We write checks to families every single month. This is by far my favorite thing to do. This is called the Realm Cares program. So these are families who, without our financial help, wouldn't be able to access this therapy that their insurance doesn't pay for. So if they use that money to keep the light bill on or to buy groceries, and it thereby affords them to be able to purchase this, and we do that. So this year we'll be giving $60,000 away in grants minimum. Last year we did about $35,000, so we wanted to double that.
How are you giving away money?
We are a very traditional 501c3 in that we do fundraising events. We have a golf tournament. We have a national run, 5K run. Okay. I walk that, by the way, but we have that. Yeah. And then we're, families recurring giving. This has touched their lives, and they give us money every month.
If someone's listening right now, how would they go about kind of getting you money?
They would go to our website, theroc.us, THEROC for Realm of Caring.us.
Right.
And then under the Take Action tab is donate.
Excellent. And you'll be fine with any kind of donation, I would imagine?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
And then we have what we call the Joy Fund. So Joy passed away from ALS, and she granted the foundation $15,000, and we matched that. So we now have a $30,000 fund for relocation grants. So if there is a family that needs to relocate, that in our estimation is about 10% that need that THC or THCA or whatever, must access that through a medical cannabis program in a medically legal state, then we'll give a $5,000 grant to that family so that they can relocate. So that's launching actually this month. We just opened that up. So those are two wonderful things that we'll be doing in 2016. And then just really launching forward with the research. So of course, launching with Johns Hopkins, and we're going to have some really fun NFL studies that are coming out, and a whole public service announcement, and really talking about that issue and CTE.
When does that announcement get to us?
Everything is never on my very urgent time frame. So I had hoped it would be
everything is never on my very urgent time frame?
Everything's never on my very urgent time frames, meaning I would like to do it tomorrow, and then nobody meets my deadlines. Heather, you're nuts. We can't do that. I wanted to do it by the Super Bowl, but that's not going to happen. So hopefully in February, we'll be able to do that. We have a large group of former and current NFL players that are using high CBD product with some really amazing testimonies, and we know traumatic brain injury and what can result. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy is a real concern, and those are our United States heroes, are these NFL players. So we want to address that. There's a problem. We have a potential solution, and we'd love to get to the bottom of it.
So the time frame is today.
Hopefully February.
And it's February 2016 as we are talking right now.
So
hopefully maybe later
by the end
month.
of the month. Yes, yes,
okay,
I hope
great.
so.
So that's soon.
Yes, very, very soon.
And the issue with the NFL is they are drug tested, and this is federally illegal. So they have that issue. This is a known neuroprotectant. They're out there bashing their heads, getting paid to smash their heads, and they can't use this and talk about it.
There's an easy solution. So then you add it to the approved list of substances that your players can take. These things aren't difficult. It is a wonder to me how difficult we make these issues when there are just very, very simple solutions.
Yeah. And Paige, you mentioned the Coalition for Access Now. You're working on a federal bill speaking of scheduling things differently for the NFL, also for federally descheduling. You didn't say rescheduling.
Nope.
You said descheduling. How come?
So Coalition for Access Now is a 501c4.
Yes.
And I'm the executive director, and we're based here and in D.C. So I'm in D.C. trying to pass a federal bill for the descheduling, to completely remove CBD and hemp from the Controlled Substances Act, where both are currently a Schedule 1 substance, the most dangerous, worst schedule you could have a substance. And so we all know that's a mistake. There's no scientist that will defend CBD or hemp, agricultural hemp, as being on the Controlled Substances Act whatsoever. In fact, the drug that my daughter Charlotte was on that caused brain damage is a Schedule 4. And that's way down the line in danger rating. So we know that I take CBD every day for myself. I'm not getting any younger. But I just think it should be. So descheduling this federally will put it regulated as a dietary supplement. So we're just fixing a mistake. That's how it should be. Everyone agrees. It's not a controversial bill. And it's basically 90% of this bill is an agricultural hemp bill. So it's going to federally legalize hemp and start this commodity back in the United States where we're known for this plant, for this crop, and also CBD being in the media for epilepsy and these disorders has everyone's ear. So that's two bills, I guess, if you want to look at it that way, two very, very small bills, a small corner of the whole recreational medical marijuana debate that DC is willing to do. So we're passing this bill.
We're passing this bill. What
we're
does that
passing
mean?
the bill.
Paige she always speaks. I love this about her.
Please.
I love this about her. Keep going, Paige.
The bill's passing. This isn't going away. Only more and more people are using this. The bill is completely bipartisan. It is 1333 is a Senate bill. So it's S 1333. And the names of co-sponsors, we have Lamar Alexander, we have Orrin Hatch. These are the people that...
Those are not left-wing nut jobs.
These are not... Right. These are the people who oversee the DEA, the FDA, the Orrin Hatch. I mean, these people are the grandfather of how this whole thing started, the Controlled Substances Act in general. So they all give it their stamp of approval that CBD should be regulated as a dietary supplement. It's like echinacea, vitamin C.
These are the guys that were there in 77 when that
exactly.
did pass. Exactly.
And Orrin Hatch, we just got Senator Mike Lee from Utah. So Hatch and Lee are from Utah, the first state that passed the CBD bill. We have the two senators from Colorado who wrote the bill. We have the Pennsylvania representative who was the original author of the House bill. And this is incredible momentum. It's just racing forward.
Remarkable.
It's remarkable in a presidential election year, like you said. Yeah. Maybe it's a big cannabis year because it's a presidential year. It's a very difficult year to pass a bill. Incredibly difficult year to pass a bill.
That's what I was going to say. So it sounds like you've got the right names on it.
We have the right names.
As far as getting a vote,
these people who are senators running for president still have to work. They're getting paid to still do their job.
Sure,
so bills still need to pass.
Well, they do.
Yeah.
But of course they don't. So as far as the vote this year, are you, I get that you're bullish, but you insist that it will pass.
Well, it's not.
Do you think that that's a 2016 thing or maybe next session?
I wanted it passed by July 2015, and it looked like we could do it. And after July last year, things just ground to a halt, as we knew in August. Everything grinds to a halt in a presidential year. Sure. So So that we need people, we need voices, and I understand that people want more. We all want more.
Sure we do.
But in DC, they're saying yes to this. I just need voices to help push it through.
And I'm one of the voices that prefers descheduling to rescheduling, specifically because of penalties. Why descheduling as far as rescheduling? Opposed to rescheduling?
I can't find a scientist to back up what number schedule would you place CBD or hemp?
Right.
There isn't a scientist that would put it on the Controlled Substances Act. It's not psychoactive, non-toxic. You can't die from an overdose. You're not getting high from this. And so no one will go in and defend that and say this should be scheduled. So that is the solution. It's not a baby step. That would be a mistake. And so to reschedule it, what number would you pick? Why did they pick one in the first place? Yeah. We're removing CBD from the whole argument of THC. If they're afraid of THC, and the stigma of fear is incredibly difficult to change somebody's mind about, we're just removing CBD from that argument, saying, take your time. Get your scientists to defend how you want to reschedule THC, which I also disagree with. I don't think THC should be a controlled substance.
But that's not what
people are just in a huge disagreement on what that schedule should be. Yeah. I think it should be descheduled.
Right.
However, when the federal bill passes 1333, it'll be like Heather was talking about, a states' rights issue. So if your state, take Idaho, where the governor vetoed the bill, the very narrow bill in Idaho for CBD only, it will not go into effect. The federal bill is the states' rights issue. So whatever state has passed legislation that this fits into, hemp, medical, CBD, whatever, it'll go into effect in that state. But it won't go into effect in every single state if they disagree.
I think it's important for anybody to hear you say, or everybody to hear you say, that you would like for THC to be descheduled.
Absolutely.
It's just that you're not working on that.
I'm working on hemp. Right. I'm talking about hemp, and that should be worked on as well, but I can't work on both.
Exactly.
And it devalues the THC argument to have me go in and fight for the whole thing, and then also say, well, here's this other tiny bill to a conservative senator, and they'll say, well, why don't we just do this one first? So I don't discuss both. I just talk about hemp. I'm there for hemp and CBD, and there are many, many issues, and there are now many bills in DC floating around.
Oh, sure there are.
And I listen so I'm listening to what they want passed. And you look at Bernie Sanders' descheduling bill, there's nobody on it. That's how unpopular it is to co-sponsor a big, broad bill right now.
I believe these are two parallel efforts in my estimation. You know, this needs to happen, and it is a parallel effort to the descheduling of THC, which will probably take forever. So we're probably going to see rescheduling before descheduling, and the banking issue, and for veterans to be, there's. Yeah,
the tiny banking issue.
So, I think that there are other really monstrous bills out there that are going to take either a really long time, or they're just too huge to get through, where this is a parallel effort.
Well, PTSD for veterans, I mean, that you're right. There are many, many issues here, and this is one, and this is what we're working on. And I'm happy to be talking to both of you about this. So just want to touch on your backgrounds before we finish, so that we understand how you have this propensity to be basically a legislative ace. Obviously, you had run for office in your past. Obviously, you're a former House member. Paige, what is your background?
Funny you should bring that up. I was considering running for a public office, but I'm not.
When?
Let's just leave it at that.
No. I mean,
before this, no. Yeah. I've always had an interest in politics.
You have.
I believe in the foundation of this country. I think this is how it's supposed to work. An everyday person can see a
Pardon
solution.
me while I swallow a little bile.
An everyday person. You know what?
She's so utopian.
We mock it, but I've been to DC. Yeah. I've been to different states. I've seen the process work. I've seen it work. It's exhausting. It's expensive. It's slow. It's incredibly difficult, but I've seen it work. It just needs efficiency brought to it. That's why I wanted to get involved more. However, I'm just doing this now. I'm just getting this bill passed. I'm seeing it work. They listen. The Senate is the thoughtful body. They're listening. They're logical.
Yes.
And they're going to do this because it's logical, because it makes sense
Indeed.
to fix mistakes and make things more efficient.
I think I mixed you up by mentioning you running for office.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to do that. What I wanted,
She's like, how did you know I was considering
I want
that?
to talk about before Charlotte,
Right.
like if you've always had an interest in politics, what was that interest?
No. I'm a mom.
Right.
I have 3 children,
Right.
and I'm a homeschooling, stay-at-home mother.
And originally, not because of illness.
Correct.
Okay.
My son is 12, and Charlotte and her twin sister, they're 9. And
Right.
so I've always, for the last 12 years, I've been a stay-at-home homeschooling
when
parent.
you said you're conservative, you come from those roots.
I'm from Connecticut. I would say I don't know where I've pendulumed back and forth a little bit. I am not, I'm probably libertarian is what
Right.
I would consider myself as, more of a conservative libertarian, I guess.
And a mom, but what were you schooled in? Obviously, you can't go to school.
Oh,
to be a
pre-med.
Okay.
Pre-med is, so
there's-
science was always my
So there's
interest.
something there as far
Oh,
as...
there's something there. All right.
I don't mean...
Seth?
What I mean is... You are terrible together, by the way. What I mean is that it's a field in which you're comfortable because of your past learnings.
Right.
Fair enough.
I'm very comfortable here. And again, I'm seeing how the process is meant to work. They want to hear from us.
Yeah.
They want to hear what we want done.
And you have run a nonprofit before or no?
Yes, I started with nonprofits about 18 years ago.
Oh, so you know what you're doing.
And prior to that, well, maybe prior to that, I was a director of operations for 14 McDonald's restaurants.
Oh, wow.
So I'm very systems oriented and very people driven,
Okay.
and love to lead and motivate and inspire.
Those are horrible things to
Horrible
do.
qualities.
What a terrible person. Okay, so we've got the 3 final questions, and the way that we'll do this is I'll ask Heather the first question, Paige the second question, and then you'll both answer the third question. The first question is, what has most surprised you in cannabis? The second question is, what has most surprised you in life? And then the third question is, on the soundtrack of your respective lives, what is one track, one song that has to be on there? So Heather first, what has most surprised you in cannabis?
I want to say something extremely positive. But the first thing that came to mind is actually how separatist it can be.
Yeah.
And that really surprised me, because when I got into this, industry by force, because of my son, I really thought peace, love, harmony, and tie-dye shirts, and yeah, man, we're gonna work together and it has been, kind of less of that. And I hope that the realm of caring and myself personally, that we can, continue to carry that olive branch and let's all work together, and smaller steps are better than no steps. And so I really hope that I think that's been the most surprising for me. And then also just how universal the plant is, because I came in with a very specific interest. I needed to save my kid, and to see this plant help with autism and MS and Parkinson's and cancer and pain and sleep and all these different things. I'm really shocked by that.
Yeah, I want to definitely catch up again on the research. When is the kind of when are you publishing anything? When can we look to you for that research?
So right now, 2015 is being collated, and reports are being done. And those are third party, like PhDs and physicians, and Marcel von Miller and Ryan Vandry. They're working on those. So I'm hoping within the next couple of months we will have something to present and hopefully publish.
Okay, great.
On our data from 2015.
So at least post on the website, and
Yes,
best
I'll give
case
you a call and say,
scenario,
hey,
actually publish it.
Yeah.
All right. So we will come back to you on that. Paige, what has most surprised you in life?
I would say that you can take a hardship, a negative thing that is deemed a very difficult negative situation, like a sick child, like a death, something very, very difficult, and turn it into something beautiful, progressive, and good. And that our view of seeing things as good and bad and having that black and white is inaccurate. And you can turn anything into a positive thing for many, many, many people. And that's been shocking. It's changed my viewpoint of having a sick kid is very horrible, and your life is going to be terrible. And I see it differently now. I think anything can be turned into however it needs to be turned to make things change.
And I think it helps knowing that Charlotte, from the wheelchair, from the signed forms, is literally walking around out there.
Yeah, I'm sweating a little right in here right now, wondering where she is.
Well,
what
she was
she's
in
doing.
good hands when we left. Right?
It's a good problem to have. Yeah, it's shocking.
But I'll tell you what, she and I locked eyes a couple times, and she might not be verbal, but she was definitely communicating with me.
Yep.
So there is that. And I'm sure you know that very well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So then I guess to end maybe on a lighter note, that soundtrack of your life, Heather, why don't you go first? One song that's got to be on there.
Ben Harper.
Oh.
You Can Change the World with Your Own Two Hands.
There you go. That's good.
That's a good answer.
That really is. It's perfect. As far as Ben Harper is concerned, I'm more of a Ground on Down fan. But that does not apply here.
There's certain music that kept me sane that decade.
Yeah.
Ben is, yes, I call him Ben.
Yeah.
He's one of them.
And
That's
we're
perfect.
a musical group. We all have huge, that's a tough one.
I
I'd say Imagine. That would be the song, because anything's possible. And you just have to dream it up. And literally, as cheesy as that is, that's the song.
So here's what's funny about the way things happen. That's not cheesy in any way. The whole point of that song is that's not a cheesy song. That's one of the greatest songs of all time, with one of the best messages of all time. So Paige, thank you for reminding us. Heather, thank you so much for allowing us into the rock.
My pleasure.
This has been unbelievable for me. Thank you guys so much for what you're doing, for the patients, for the research, for the legislation. You're kind of doing it all. So
thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yep.
It's very important.
Keep telling the story.
Yeah, keep it out there.
Paige Figi and Heather Jackson. So what can you do? Go to therock.us and click on Take Action, where you can either donate, connect, volunteer, or socialize. Go to coalitionforaccessnow.org and click Take Action and support the Senate bill or House bill by either calling or emailing your House member or senators.